suppose we can't get started. So let me call the meeting to order, and if we can all rise, we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I'm going to cover the public comment section, and I don't see any members of the public here, but I want to put on my public comment hat and say something as a resident of Londonderry. So, for the record, my name's Larry Casey. I live at 35 Forest Street. And Dave, I just wanted to express my thanks for your dedication and hard work. I've gotten to know you a little bit between concerts on the Common and this activity here, but I think I recall the first time I really spent any time with you. We were walking around the town common, and we had business to conduct, but we got into a discussion about our lives in Londonderry and everything. And it was clear to me at that time that you're a dedicated professional, an asset to this town, but also, you and your wife raised kids here in town. You're a resident, you're a taxpayer, and it was clear to me that you're very passionate about the quality of life in this town and doing things right. And I just personally want to thank you for that professionalism, and it's it's an honor to know you, and I just want to express that.
Thank you, Larry. I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
So,
I can
Dave,
just say deal or stand up and say some more.
anybody's welcome to do that before I close public comment. So, obviously, Dave is here, as is Kirsten, and out of respect for your time, I wanted to move you up in the agenda so that we could, share the information that you have put together for us.
Sure.
Open it up for questions and that sort of thing. So, I'm gonna. Let's see, Dave, you brought packets.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Frank, remind me to ask about this before.
You had one already?
Dave leaves.
For each of you pass down.
I already have one.
You have yours with you there?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, okay. Oh, you said that. That's okay. Yeah, you get enough of that, right?
It's being too efficient.
You have plenty, so. You already got one? Okay.
Everybody got one?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just explain briefly a little bit about what you have in front of you. Basically, that was a subcommittee that we toured with last week, right? And so with the chief building inspector and the fire department representative as well. And a lot of the discussion was based around pretty much where I had left off last year, when the board directed us to go out and see, what are some pricing around some of the real basic components, focused primarily on safety of the building. If we're going to open this, make this a municipal managed and owned and operated facility, and opening it to the public, there's a lot of safety concerns that we have with a building of this age. So I solicited quotes from predominantly all local vendors, so that we could get pricing that was reflective of the area rather than versus the region. Sometimes when you look at things more broadly, it gets out of whack with prevailing wages and whatnot. So we used just about every single local vendor or contractors that already conduct business with the town of Londonderry. And we looked at some of the things for like the ADA ramp, boiled it down basically to just that metal ramp, which I know you've already had some discussion with at this level. Expanded steel, put it on the side of the building. That alone is just the cost for the ramp. And in the backup, you'll see all the proposals that were sent for $13,150. Electrical was $92,500, again using a local electrical company. These quotes, just so that you understand, are very general in nature. It's difficult to bring an electrician in and say, hi, we want our building to meet electrical code what's it gonna cost, and not provide them with a set of plans, a set of details of
Yeah.
what is, gonna be actually
The
contracted.
ballpark figures.
So a lot of it is based upon commercial pricing, square footage, two-story building. A lot of the panel itself, as it sits right now, is maxed. And so with the subcommittee meeting we had last week, the electrical or building inspector himself, I think it's fair to say, Larry, that he's fairly uncomfortable with saying, I can't sign off on electrical work that's in this building that he hasn't even seen.
Right.
Yeah.
That creates a little bit of, anxiety for him in that nature.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, so the discussion, pretty much went similar to how I solicited that price. And that was that, what would it take to rewire the entire building? And they based it upon square footage. Now, that price, 92.5, included the second floor. It also included, bringing the panel up to a 400 amp panel, which is, pretty typical for a commercial building, rather than the 200 amp that exists. It included relocating it to what I refer to as a new mechanical room at the back of the building, because when we looked at doing this rewiring, replumbing, reworking HVAC, we felt the easiest way for vendors to come in would be to have a new mechanical room at the back of the building, whether if we utilize that storage area that's there or expand upon it. And therefore, all of the utility services to the building could be brought into that room and then sent into the building wherever we need it, whether it's just the first floor, putting in the wiring to the second floor, but leaving it unconnected and ready for future use and whatnot. So that price of 92.5, it could be less, because if you only want to do one floor, but nonetheless, you're still going to want to send the feeds to the upstairs so
Yeah.
that they're there. So you just wouldn't do any of the finish wiring. The fire and smoke alarm is a unique discussion, because if you don't sprinkler the building, then you need obviously a lot more smoke detection and heat detection.
Yeah.
And so when we met with the vendor for that discipline, they saw a need to put in a lot more than what was there, replace the units that are there, and some of them, quite frankly, they're not sure that they're even,
Working.
like when the building was open, they would test that it's working, it's fine, but to come back to nature, those types of units, they may not be able to replace them. So it was really an easier just way to go about it, to bring that component right up to speed with where we need to be today. The other side of that is, if you did sprinkler system in the building, you could lower the amount of need for smoke detection and heat detection, because you have the fire sprinkler system.
Any idea by how much? You're talking 50%, 20%?
I would guess to say that if you spent, just to use whole numbers, if you spent 50,000 for just the robust smoke detection system, you could probably reduce that somewhere between 25 and 35%, with spending the investment of putting sprinklers in.
Then, yeah, so in other words, you put in 100K for the sprinkler,
Correct.
you might trim 20% off.
Correct, because you're not gonna have as much
Yeah.
need for coverage,
Okay.
because of the fire protection. With the caveat, understanding that water isn't in that building, so you'd have to factor in the need to bring the water to the building. Now, it's not far away, the fire hydrant is right at Pillsbury.
Yeah.
I didn't go
Yeah, you
and solicit
could expand
pricing.
that to a
That's
point,
pretty
yeah.
easy to come up with pretty quick, it's per linear foot, I'm putting pipe in. It's, I'd estimate 300 feet, to put that in and bring that into that mechanical room.
Yeah.
So Dave, just to clarify,
Sure.
this 98.8, call it 99,
Yeah.
doesn't include bringing water to the building?
No.
Okay.
No, that's just for the sprinkler
The
system.
sprinkler system.
And it's a two-tiered type system, similar to this building. It's a dry system and a wet system. So in the heated areas, it would be a wet, meaning, water's literally standing in, like these heads that are in this room and whatnot throughout the building. But in the attic space, we have a dry system. And that is just compressed air that's in there, and in the event it pops, then everything flows into it. Otherwise, the sprinkler system can freeze in the attic. So that's why it's done like that. So the concrete floor, you'll see that pricing. That is the cost to do the method that we have been discussing. We do not say that is the one and only best way to do it.
The
Flowable fill with a concrete slab on top of it, which I described.
Yeah.
Which
What would that do to the wooden supports? Would you have to
you
take them out?
wouldn't even have them. They all come out.
That
Yep.
would all come out.
It's similar to, have you ever heard of what a mono slab is?
No, I'm not versed in
Okay.
building techniques, so don't waste your
Sure.
time.
So a mono slab is essentially when you're gonna have a solid concrete footing slash flat foundation, if you will.
Yeah,
We're doing it opposite because we're gonna build it from the inside out because the outside's already there.
yeah.
Which is the stone foundation and whatnot. But that particular method alone, which I discussed at great length with, this is a very reputable concrete company in town.
I went to high school with his son.
Yeah,
He's
and
a-
so
he's a good guy.
he thinks that's a good idea. And so he was confident that he could put together a price for me, but that's just for the flowable fill, and that's just for the concrete. That's not bulkheading off, so it wouldn't be done under the entire building. It would only be done in the hall space. So the house portion of it would be no need for that. We would bulkhead that off, which means you essentially are building a form underneath, and you would fill from there to the
I'm not
stage.
sure where it is.
So from the double doors,
Double
when
doors,
you
yeah.
walk in,
Yeah.
you would bulkhead beneath that part, that separates the
Okay,
front
so
part
I'm
of the
going
house,
under the front entrance,
and all the way to the stage.
and all the way to the stage and probably
That's
the
the only
stage.
portion that you would do that in,
Yeah.
that method, correct. Okay? So that $100,000, that's just to do that work. You'd have to get somebody to create the bulkhead, build the bulkhead, and then
Yeah.
you'd have to then put the wooden floor on top of that. Preferably a
So you're
laminate
looking
or an
at
engineered
maybe
wood that,
Another 50% on top,
I honestly, I wouldn't say that much.
40,
But
50,
the
yeah.
engineered, and if you go with an engineered wood, or a laminate, that looks like it, that would also be maintenance friendly for the
Yeah.
future, then, for that much square footage, I honestly don't know what the
Yeah,
pricing
I
is,
mean,
so I don't wanna
My
speculate.
concern is the destruction of the existing
Yeah, well,
floor.
this method, the floor will never sink again, because it can't.
I know.
So, or fall, I
Yeah,
should say.
one of the reasons I'm on here is the historic base, so yeah,
Understand.
we're,
Mhm.
have a different view of things.
Understand.
but,
Yep, but the timbers could be showcased, if removed, they could be showcased throughout the facility. You could, perhaps even utilize the lumber to use it for some of the trim work in the building and whatnot, and have storyboards that express that, and show pictures and how it was. You could send it to a milling and things of that nature. So there's ways to preserve the historical value of artifacts within the building that could be repurposed within the
Yeah, but you're
construction of the
basically
building.
going to be losing all the floor
Yes.
support.
Correct. It would no longer be.
Can I ask a question here?
Yeah.
With regards to the artifacts that we have from before, Ann said that she had asked that group to return them to that building.
Yes.
Did they get, what kind of a vote did they get?
Well, they didn't have a formal one yet, but I'm pretty confident I can say that the feeling was those beams will be returned if they're going to be used in restoring the meeting house. If they're not going to be used to help shore up the floor or whatever, then I think the Historic Society will want to keep them.
Okay.
But if you can put them back in the building, I don't think there'll be any resistance at all.
Because
Now,
they're simply
The
stored
only
right
thing
now.
that you've got to realize is Anne did not, or actually it was Jim Butler and Anne together, they did not save all of the beams that were taken out. They only saved a couple of the main runners. The others were just destroyed and thrown away, so we can't restore the floor structure to what it originally was.
Okay, that's,
We could improve it if we went that way, but then you're in conflict with the concrete floor idea.
yeah,
Correct.
So
Yeah, this is just an
somebody-
idea.
Somebody at the town is gonna have to
Yeah.
make that decision ultimately. Do you try and restore the floor the way it was, as near as you can, with you obviously engineered, whatever you called it,
Yeah.
to fill in the missing pieces?
Right.
But from the pictures that I saw with Anne, what they put in there in 2014 wasn't even going the right way. It was a real mess up.
So moving on to the,
Thank you, Dave, I'm sorry.
yeah, no problem. So moving on to the plumbing, that price there, was pretty, very, very generic. We struggled with that one because, in the initial conceptual design of it and looking at it and some of the ideas that we, went with the layout of the building, we were talking about, a couple of things, adding some more bathrooms to the building at the back, for a few reasons. One, in order to get enough of the labs that we believe would be appropriate for the hall space, notwithstanding what is there now, but we would need to consume the square footage that the kitchen now serves. And that would bring you up to a better threshold of what is really required for a facility that's gonna hold 99 people or potentially more. And so the other concern was the condition of the septic system, which I did not get pricing on the septic system. The septic system right now is pretty much, or even if it is a system of sorts, is a question mark. I didn't really research that. I don't know what's on file with the state, don't know how old it is. I would assume that it was installed at some point when the building was being utilized as a town hall. So we're guessing 50 years plus. And so that may have served well for the limited use that we've had for many, many years. But if we're gonna truly get a robust use out of this building, then that could tax that septic system, and it could create another problem. So when you look to do a new septic system, its current location being at the front of the building and kind of where the entrance is, you almost kind of drive over it when you're coming in. It's off in the grassy area. We had talked about moving it to the rear of the property where there's much more, green space and whatnot. And that would also free up the front area for, if we redid the parking lot to make it as safe as possible.
Parking.
For stormwater retention and whatnot, which is what we should do as well, if we're gonna rethink the parking lot.
Dave, just to clarify, sewer's not an option?
Sewer's not an option, it's too far away, it's up basically up by close to the school, and sewer is extremely expensive to install, and just for one building, I think the way we're approaching this project already, that is surely not within reach. But at any rate, so that, we were thinking of, we were trying to foresee, which is what we discussed in the meeting, was make sure that the beginning phases of your project don't conflict with where you want to be in your end phase.
Yeah.
I understand the urgency and the desire to want to get the build open. I wholeheartedly do. In a building of that age and nature, my concern and I pointed out some of the things that I've observed over the last 16 to 18 months of the building being uninhabited. All buildings age and deteriorate, and especially ones that are uninhabited, they go quicker. And ones that are then, a couple centuries old are going to go even faster. So, the thinking was, to do it in phases regardless, but make sure that where you want to be on that end phase doesn't conflict with the front. So in other words, if we did some of the simple things that we think we can do to the bathrooms now, but not understand or fix the floor in using this particular method, if we don't put the sewer drain line in, at least dry, to the rear of the building, because someday we believe we're gonna have to put in a new septic system, and it's logical to put it at the back of the property.
Yeah.
Then those things need to be, thought So the plumbing was a challenge to get that number, because I didn't really have a way to tell them how many toilets, how many urinals, how many sinks, are we putting it at the back or not? But we did our best guesstimate, and that's where you arrive at that number.
In terms of toilets, we've been talking all along about opening this up for up to 99 people.
Correct.
Do you have some sort of feel for how many toilets you would normally need in a building to service that number of people?
Nick did, the building inspector did give some of those numbers, and I think it was for every 50 people, it was 2 toilets or something to that
Okay,
effect.
so you need about 4.
So we're under the
Yeah.
threshold, but
Yeah,
it's a gray area. But I tell you
Yeah.
this, if you have 99 people in that building,
yeah, you
and you
probably
have one
want,
men's toilet,
yeah,
and only 2 female toilets,
no, it's not gonna work, is it?
and it's a
You
problem.
probably want 3 of each, and,
So, I believe, in the conceptual that I had, we had 3 female toilets, 2 men's, and a urinal in the front part of the building, in a variety of, and also all ADA compliant. And then at the back of the building, we had, I think about the same. And so the idea was to, by having a bathroom at the back as well, was so that you could have multiple things going on at one time. You could have a function going on in the hall, and you could have an event going on at the pavilion. And where the kitchen would be relocated at the back could service either the hall or the pavilion. And the bathrooms at the back of the building would be accessible from the outside as well. So the hall would have the interior bathrooms, the event would have the exterior bathrooms. And then for different events like Old Homes Day and whatnot, where we rent urinals and porta potties and things like that, you'd have that accessibility as well. So that was some of the thought process on that.
Let me ask you this, is it possible to put in your dry toilet, your pipe to what you think is going to be the toilet before they spread that floor?
You could, you certainly could. Of course, you're gonna wanna know elevations, you're gonna wanna know that design, because you're gonna have to put that pipe in, and you can put it in dry, and you can still use the bathrooms at the front. You just end up reworking the plumbing a little bit under just the house portion. If in the future you were to put the septic at the back and put those additional bathrooms in, because then you're just gonna have to go in and take out, the pipe that goes this way and hook it to the one that goes that way. And perhaps there may be some tweaking, but you need to have that all in the plan, and that's where it gets complicated, because I'm asking a plumber to give me pricing with not having a plan in front of him.
So, this is on topic but a little off topic. In your opinion, would you say that we should be thinking in phases or thinking in final?
So in your packet, oh yeah, oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, you take this one.
No, I got it, fine,
It's
yep,
got a lot
yep.
more things.
So in your packet, that was a deep thought there, so I.
No, I didn't want to interrupt.
So in your packet towards the back, you're gonna see, an exchange, of an email between myself and the town's consultant, Weston and Sampson. And, we kind of were getting into that was our next, progression in this process of, start getting, some real determined structural assessment. Again, the overall consensus in our visual observations and looking at what we see, is the consensus is that the building is sound. If we saw sagged ridge lines, if we saw, wall sags and bows, throughout a large majority of the building, we probably would have done a structural analysis much earlier on. But there doesn't seem to be any concern or anything that can't be remedied, I should say. Or discovered for that matter. And so, You'll see though, between our exchanges is that, yes, to answer your question more sharply, phasing is the more likely approach that we were looking at.
Okay.
Phasing meaning though, a little bit different from what this group is talking about. You're trying to get the building open like now. And so, this phased approach was more of, let's get, a lot of the stuff that, for lack of a better term, isn't too sexy, but a lot of the site work done, the grading, get the water to the building, get that mechanical room set up, ready to go, extend the gas line from where it is now up into that building, get the services, the utilities underground, the electric, bring all of that into that mechanical room, get the new entryway in there. So a lot of that stuff would be kind of the phase one, and again, it's loosely defined in here because we
Yeah.
didn't get to it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Dave, just for,
which way is that, Dave? I'm
it's-
difficulty finding it.
It's down towards the back. It's just an email. It's got my name.
It's separate, yeah.
I think it's
Oh.
just before that.
it's a.
There you go.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
yeah,
end.
that's the second
Ah,
page.
okay, thanks.
Let me ask you about the gas.
Well-
Isn't there gas already in the building?
It is, but we would extend it further back to where the new mechanical room would be. Yeah, that's all.
Hmm.
Just for clarification, we're talking about a topic called possible sequence of work packages.
Right,
Okay.
Right.
Which was page 3 of the
Correct.
email exchange. you
Yes.
referred to.
Correct.
Okay.
so yeah, we were always looking at a phased approach. We know to, there's also the potential of, when you take a project that you're not putting a rigid deadline on with a contractor, saying, look, we need to be in this building in 18 months. Well, that comes with a cost.
Right.
If we can work in a flexible way, if we were to do the warrant article and do the bid process, we were going to structure it so that we can do some things that are logical to, like, do this site work in the fall. And that gets us to a point where, hey, anytime during the winter you wanna get your electrician and start roughing in the electrical, you can.
Yeah.
Anytime you wanna get roughing in the plumbing, you can. That would be the next phase, the next series of getting rough work in. And that could be done during the winter months.
Yeah.
And then in the spring, we come back, we maybe get back outside, we do some other things. So we were going to leave flexibility in there to work with the contractor, and sometimes you'll either see a cost savings there, or sometimes not, because sometimes companies do, it'll all depend on the selection process through the bid.
Yep.
Because there are some companies that they don't wanna just keep putzing along with a project, they wanna get in, get out, get done, get out.
Right.
Yeah.
So that would all be vetted out through the bid process, but I think, with a building of this age, no matter what we do, the phasing is really the only way to go, because we really don't know what we're gonna find. We're only going with what we know, we really haven't gotten too intrusive with the building, ripping walls apart, and see what's really in there.
Exactly.
So,
And then
Dave, would you, I'm
Oh,
sorry,
no, go
you
ahead.
go ahead.
The last thing I was gonna say is, I know, what, four meetings back, we had brought up a topic of different ideas for the building, right? So, we want to have town buy-in, right? I know we've stuck recently to that topic of just a hall. And I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong, but we stick to one topic, and if that gets voted down, we're back at square one.
That's my feeling.
And I really feel strongly that we need to give multiple options. And I know we spoke about it and we talked about it. And the town, I know it was about a year ago, had submitted from a couple people in town what they were looking at, right? One was a hall, one was the SAU office, one was having it be a farmer's market. I don't think that's the best idea because we already have like three right here. One was opening it up to rental for some sort of I don't want to say restaurant, but something of that sort, because there's nothing in the center of town, and it would be, let's say you had, I'm not saying they said this, but let's say you had a burrito spot in there, like a California burrito or something like that, right? That would be very sought after due to the fact that you have nothing for everybody here in the center of town. And on top of it, you have the high school right there, right? So much money flowing in wise. I'm not saying it has to be that, I'm just saying that is an option. Or the option of, I know you had brought up something at the very beginning when we were all talking about it, kind of like a art center type thing. I think we need to work with a designer to design out, amongst us, we come up with 4 different topics. Because besides that, and I don't mean to put this, but like everything, you did an amazing job on this, and everything we're talking about is sound for this. But as you said earlier, without a design, they're all just somewhat fictitious numbers, right? They're roundabouts. So I think as a group, we need to come up with 4 ideas, some of our own and some that the town had suggested. And we need to put pen to paper, and I'm not sure if the town has some money for us to go to a designer, or if we have a in-house designer within the town to put a design from the building on those 4 ideas. We take those designs, we bring them out to the bid process, we get the bids for each of the 4 designs, and then that is what we go off to bring to the town for vote. I don't want us to put all this work and effort into one idea, to have it just completely shot down and we all have to come back together and restart the whole process again and do what we're talking about right now. That's just my opinion.
Okay, well,
So-
thank you for that.
Yeah, and so Dick, thank you for that. That's actually one of our intended agenda items tonight.
Exactly.
So we came to said at last meeting, we said we
Yeah.
need to go with, we said 3 options. 4 is fine too, but
Yeah.
So that's
yeah.
exactly.
And my reaction to that is, and I'm almost through this anyway.
Yes, sorry about that.
No, that's fine, that's completely fine. I think, I hear you loud and clear. I think the biggest hurdle we've had from day one is what is going to be the useful purpose and intent of the building.
Mhm.
And I still don't think we're there.
No, yeah.
But, so this was a challenge for me to work with, an engineering firm and, doing a conceptual design, basically just by listening and talking to a variety and dozens upon dozens of people, and phone calls and emails and the town manager and taking direction from the board, to try to come up with a conceptual design.
Exactly.
And a lot of what the basis of that I put in with the designers on that was to use it in the similar fashion that's been serving this town for hundreds of years. It's been a community center, it's been a gathering point, it's been a mecca for information. I've heard stories of people that went to kindergarten there, that had their sweet 16 there, that got married there, that had anniversaries there, birthday parties, on and on and on. And of course, the wonderful memories that we have with the Lions and selling Christmas trees and everything else and everything in between. And then of course during Old Homes Day. And so that has always been my approach, is that the building will continue to serve the town of Londonderry the way that it has for, over 200 plus years. So, with that said, so just lastly, the HVAC was probably the biggest one, and my largest concern for that is that the 2 units that serve the building, there's one for the upstairs, there's one for the downstairs. They are over 21 plus years old now, and climbing, and I do have an issue with one of them already. I just shut it down. It happened in early April. We shut it down. I'm like, I'll deal with that another day. And then there's the air conditioning that only works for the hall portion of the building. It doesn't do the rest of it. So again, that number came strictly from starting from the new mechanical room at the back of the building and worked the way in. And the other importance too to that mechanical room being in the back of the building was at the front of the building, for those that are watching the meeting, in the front left corner of the building, is what I must presume was the old town clerk's office, or maybe even town manager, because that's where the vault is. And the tin ceiling is still up, but that is being utilized as the mechanical room right now. That's where the HVAC units are, that's where the electrical panel is, and everything kind of emanates out of there. And I thought that that speaking to the heart of trying to preserve some of the historical nature of the building, there's three nice features right there. There's the exposed brick that we could take the plaster off of, so you could see that. We could refurbish the vault door and whatnot. The electrical panel would be out of there, the wiring nightmare would be out of there, and that would be a nice office space that whomever that would work in there or kind of manage the building, as people come in to set those appointments up or have a meeting or talk about what their event's gonna be, right there, they get some flavor of that building and some historical preservation of that building, right there, sitting in front of them, sitting in a chair. So I thought that would be a good approach. Other numbers I did not have time to get together was, insulation. We do a lot of work in Londonderry talking about energy conservation
Yes.
and keeping things as tight as we can, with this building and as well as all of them. And this is by large and far the least energy efficient building, not by design, just by its age.
Right.
So there is some type of insulation in the attic that it looks like blown insulation, but even the building inspector was, we don't know what it is. So, we kicked it up and played it a little bit more than I was liking, as the air as things were getting the air particles, but that needs to be probably removed.
Yeah.
We need to get some insulation in the walls. The insulation that is under the building is failing, as we know, it doesn't take too much to see that. So there's gotta be some serious thought into, if we're gonna put $326,000 HVAC work in this building, we wanna make sure we're keeping it heated and acclimated, as energy efficient as possible. And then obviously the hazmat testing, and Larry and I talked about that. That's another thing that I think needs to be done regardless, because if you're gonna, even if at the end of the day, sadly, the end result is the building's coming down, which for the record, I do not wish for that. You need to do a hazmat test anyway. You have to, in order to take down a building of that age.
Right.
So that's not money for loss, at any rate. So that could be something that you perhaps want to at least get an allocation started for that.
Right.
And that will help answer some other questions and how you may do other disciplines if we get into restoring the building.
Dave, if I can just stop you right there.
Sure.
Ray, you had something you wanted to
Yeah,
share with us?
look, I wasn't here for the last meeting.
Right.
I was out of town, and I got here late, so, for this meeting, because I was over in Stroud. So nevertheless, I've missed quite a bit here. So I see we have some figures here that, Dave
Yeah.
has come up with, which is good, because we do need figures.
Right.
We do need costs, we do need to know what direction we're going in. I'm not sure, we still don't know really what direction we're going in. I think what Dave said in regards to how the building should be used, it should be used as a public area like it has been used. These other ideas about having a restaurant or something, I think we need to move beyond that. But has there been a reach out to the general community to get an idea? I'm asking that because I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think that is so important, because we do need to have some input as to what the thought is with the general public. Because they're gonna be paying for this, okay? And so, can I get an answer in regards to that?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, and maybe it's, perhaps it's great that Kirsten was here, because prior to her arrival, that was some concern that was brought up. And so upon Kirsten's arrival, she quickly, got together with me on where I was at with that, because we knew there had to be some sort of public outrage. And so we did have an open hall, an open house there that invited the public. Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I know what the history is, what has transpired.
Yeah.
I'm talking about now.
No, the
That was
answer to
not
your
very
question is
long.
So
no.
this was just last fall, and then
Yeah.
we had the meeting here, a town hall meeting, if you will, and it was a good turnout, 70 plus people or 50 plus people, something like that.
About that, yeah,
Yeah.
somewhere between 50 and 60 townspeople, and then we also
I passed on the list of the comments that we got through the online forum, which was open for several months.
Right.
So we did get input from well over 100 different people in terms of what they said, and that's what Derek was referencing
Right.
earlier today.
Yeah, so some of those ideas are there. And just to wrap up what I have in front of you, so bear in mind that all of those add up to, well over $500,000.
Oh, yeah.
And you're still not in the building. And in fact, you'll see the hourly rates, which are actually quite conservative, but the company that I solicited to give me those hourly rates for things like demo, framing, drywall work, carpentry work and whatnot, he just based it upon, New Hampshire rates, not, prevailing wages. So, because if you hire the electrician and say, you're gonna come in and rewire the building, well, they're not gonna start tearing sheetrock off, and they're certainly not putting it back. So I didn't really budget in anything for, demo or restoring. So it quickly adds up. And if you cross-reference some of these numbers in the study that we did, they're actually pretty close. If not, in some cases, a little bit more, and that's not surprising because when you do a total project, you're not likely gonna spend $326,000 in the HVAC, because you're gonna have a well thought out plan and design done and whatnot, so.
I've got a couple of quick questions about this, Dave, just so I know what I'm looking at
Sure.
here. Would it be fair for me to say that this is probably a good estimate of the minimum that needs to be done to get people to safely walk into that building and be able to use it for a gathering?
That's kind of what was asked of me
Right.
from the board last year.
Okay.
They were like, well, can we throw a couple $100,000 at
Right,
it?
so if I look at that as a baseline, now, the other thing, as you just pointed out, you got hazmat and things like that. Would it be a fair assumption that we're probably gonna have to spend around $1 million, basically, to just get this?
Just to get to a particular point where you may be able to let the public in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see down the bottom,
Yeah.
all the no's,
Yeah, I'm
no
just trying
site
to get,
work, no,
trying to wrap my head
reservation.
around, what are we gonna be looking at as article something or other at the town meeting, and it's probably gonna be around $1 million.
it,
Baseline.
at a baseline, but I hate to say
I'm
that.
not trying to put you on a spot, I
Well,
just wanna get my
because,
own
yeah,
stuff together.
because, the $3.5 million price tag that
Yeah,
we came up with, I understand, but there's a lot of things that are done in there, that there's the full design done. You have to have it's all, a lot of work goes into a lot of the things
Oh,
that
yeah.
you don't see and touch.
I know.
The engineering, the designing, the totality of it, the site work, the paving, the drainage, the new septic system.
Yeah, I mean,
And I get it, it's so, and my fear, and I know the line you're going down, my fear is that, well, I'm just gonna take off my personal hat for a minute, my professional hat, I'm gonna put on my personal. All right, and I'm gonna tell you that I've lived in town now for 25 years with my family, all right? And since I've worked here for 3 years, it's been a great honor to do so. And I, always kept the local, stuff at afar, because where I was enough for me, and I liked living in town, and so I didn't need to see the ins and outs of Londonderry. I thoroughly enjoyed living here. But I'm also grateful that Londonderry leads the way, and that really stuck with me when I started working here. I started hearing it more and more and more. I would read it from time to time in the paper and little catchphrase, and I always liked that Londonderry leads the way. And I look at this building, and I don't like the approach that we're gonna do the least. It has served this town longer than
that's not
anything
where I'm
else.
going.
But this is me now talking,
Yeah.
this is just me talking. And it has served this town, for generations upon generations upon generations. And I think we owe it to that building and the history of Londonderry, and our mantra of Londonderry leads the way, to put our absolutely best foot forward and get a huge public, rally campaign, if you will, outreach, if you will, to businesses, to people that have been in town for 5 years or 50 years, and make them understand the historical importance of that building, and that we want to keep that and hand it off to the next millennia of generations that are to come. And I understand, you know, we don't want to spend $50 million, but I don't think that we should be doing the least. Londonderry lease doesn't roll off the tongue as well as Londonderry lease. And I just think that we owe it. That building, that property is sacred ground in my mind, and it's done a lot for this community as a whole. There's been, you know, many debates and around this. If you look back in time to when the town hall moved out of there in the early 70s, they were at a crossroads then what to do with the building, until the Lions come along and they took it over, because they were having these same types of quarrels back then what to do. And Larry, in our very friendly and candid meeting, he showed me a picture that he took or was given to him of a night on the common, and it was almost like God's flashlight on it. You know, the sun, the way it was peeking through the clouds, and it had the building illuminated in a way that was just fascinating. You look at the photo, and until I said, Larry, I think what would be neat is to, you know, have that up for people to view, and then crop the building out and see what that looks like, and how does Londonderry feel about that. And so, I don't have that tech savvy stuff. My daughter does. I unfortunately have a teenager, so I didn't need to bother she's got enough going on. But I sent it to my daughter, who's in college,
Awesome.
Can he finish, Rick, before?
And so she cropped it out and sent it back to me, and I sent it to Larry. You know what was funny, Larry? I didn't share this with you. I didn't even notice that there were 2 police cars there in front of it until the building was no more. And so
I was going to ask him to move before I took the picture.
Yeah, I didn't even notice them when I first viewed it, and I think that would be a big black eye on Londonderry if it comes to that. And I don't know where the answer lies, and I think this committee has a lot of work put out for it, but I don't think it should be rushed, and I think, you know, you do your due diligence, but we've got to do it right, and we can't just call up an electrician and say, go in there and start ripping stuff out of walls and start putting wires in it. We owe more to it than that, and that's just that's the end of my personal.
No, I agree with you there. The reason I was coming at this that way is what was going through my mind when I looked at this is, if the minimum is $1 million, we've already got a tough job selling this at town meeting.
I disagree.
Anyway,
Therefore, we've
excuse me, Ray, you would raise your hand.
publicity.
Yeah, look, did I understand that you said that there's no need for any structural investigation?
No, I did not say that.
Oh.
I said it,
So-
yeah. There should be, that's part of it in your packet, yeah.
Is that in here?
Yeah, there's the discussion of looking at it more closely in the next step in the process, yeah.
Well, okay, so we're talking about this old building, and pretty much we've all come to the concurrence that we want to keep it. And we want to fix it up to be used by the general public, okay. But the most important thing is the structural integrity of the building.
Right.
And we have the information, at least some of it, that the building department has. And I would strongly suggest that we need to have somebody that is an expert
Yes.
to confirm that the foundation is stable and is going to remain to be stable. Otherwise, we're throwing good money after
Yeah,
bad.
I think perhaps I stated it before you got here, Ray, so I already touched base on that a little bit, that in general observations and what we know from what we've done leading up to it, the general consensus between a lot of the engineers that looked at it, of different disciplines and whatnot.
What engineers?
From Weston and Sampson that looked at the building.
That's
You
one.
know, yeah, it is one, but there's many on their staff, but, we had about 7 of them out there that day, from different disciplines in engineering. But, you know, the general consensus, and even looking at, you know, some of the attic timbers and whatnot, is that the building itself is generally sound. If it wasn't, if we had any reservation about that at all, I wouldn't be giving tours, I wouldn't have Ann up in the attic for the third time
Well,
with
I-
that iguana. and
Personally, I have
you know,
reservations.
you know, the building is safe enough to go in. You know.
I don't care that it's safe enough to go in. It's safe enough to go in right now,
Right,
okay?
correct.
We're talking about whether it's gonna be safe in 10 years.
Right,
Okay?
understood.
We're talking about putting taxpayer money
Right.
into this,
Mhm.
and we want to make sure we're spending the money
Correct.
correctly,
Correct.
okay? I strongly suggest that we need to have, in all due respect to Western Census,
Yeah.
they're good people,
Mhm.
okay? But is that their expertise?
No.
Okay, so I strongly suggest that we need to make sure that wait a minute, we've already gone in, we're already saying that something's sunken, okay? We can say it's just the cross timbers, but how are the cross timbers tied into the sills?
Mhm.
We need to know what the sills are. I strongly say this, okay? I'm not an engineer, I'm not an expert, okay? But I do know the most important thing is the foundation and the roof, okay?
Of course, I made that
And we
point
need to
last
make
week.
sure that the money that we're gonna be spending, and I think reasonably, we ought to at least say it's gonna be $1.5 million. If we're gonna present something to the general public, yes, we don't wanna hit them with $5 million, because that ain't gonna fly,
No.
okay? And we do need to make sure what we put forward is that it's gonna be used for the general public, that's what the general public understands and thinks that's okay. But we might wanna make sure, yes, it's gonna have to be done in stages. Absolutely, it's gonna have to be done in stages. Because if we do the whole thing, it's gonna be over $5 million, okay? And that ain't gonna fly,
No.
okay?
Yeah.
We want this thing to move forward. Whatever we present, we want it to be something that the general public is gonna say, that's reasonable, and yes, I'll vote for that.
I think your point's well taken, Ray. Thank
Okay.
you for sharing that.
Okay, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
No, no, no,
You
you
don't,
don't, you
I
don't need to
feel strongly
apologize.
about this,
I
and
know
I'm
you
gonna
do.
say what I think is important.
I
Yeah,
respect that.
one thing I'd like
If I
to-
may, to give a counterpoint,
Yeah, go ahead.
because I respectfully disagree.
By the way, I'm sorry, I don't know if I met you. Have I met you?
Dan Gore, yes,
Dan Gore.
sorry,
Huh? Did you
Dan.
get a haircut or something? I don't know.
no, I don't, we've been at different meetings, so we
Oh, okay.
I do believe, and Dave, you can clarify this, that and I know that Ray, you weren't here when Dave presented the floor information. That in this proposal, like it or not like it, the concrete floor sort of answers that question about, is it?
Yes.
Yeah, so there is a path to that. Where I'm going to respectfully disagree
Yeah.
with your point is, I don't want us to consistently say, the town won't do it, they won't go for it. And I appreciate, Dave, your personal thoughts on this, because just doing the bare minimum to get this building open, to do what it has done, I'm not interested in that. And I think there are a lot of people in town who are not interested in that. They want more.
Okay, yeah, but you're having a counterpoint to what I said. What's your counterpoint?
So my counterpoint is that I believe there are options we should, and we've said we're going to discuss tonight, about what the potential uses are of this building.
Right.
Some of which are going to cost $3, $4, $5, perhaps $10 million, because we need to present what different options are, right?
Right.
And we can't just assume that the town won't go for it, right? Now, the town has not gone for a number of things in recent years. The auditorium at $9.8 million, right? The Moose Hill project, just last year, right? In fact, the town hasn't agreed to pay for anything in almost 20 years. I don't think I'm wrong about that. Okay? The gym, I think, was the last thing that, we kind of bonded and paid for and whatever. And there are plenty of people in this town, and maybe they don't speak up all the time, who don't feel like we're going to say no to everything. Because this town is going to pot.
What?
We've got going to pot. We
What
got
does that mean?
Our schools are falling apart. They're old, tired.
Yeah,
We haven't invested anything in so long in this town that if we continue to just say we're never going to pay for anything, that's not the way towns work. That's not the way communities grow and build. Londonderry, we can't lead the way. We're so far behind right now because we don't have things that other towns have.
Yeah.
And, you know, we said in the 2008 recession, oh, we can't raise taxes. Well, that was true. That was a tough time. Okay? But we've been saying the same thing every year since. And saying we're never going to raise taxes, and yet we've got bonds that are retiring or have retired. We've got tax increment finance properties that are coming, that the tax monies are now coming in and will continue to come in as those agreements, you know, work through their terms and everything. We've got Woodmont Commons, which has costs associated with it, but also brings in revenue as it's developed. And so you generate the money and you spend the money to improve your town. And this is an opportunity for us to take something that I think the general consensus here, but also throughout the town, is to do something with it. To not just let it go,
Yeah.
not tear it down. I think that's at least the consensus, to do something with
If
it.
I could add to a happy middle ground between the both of what you're saying, my anxiety as a manager comes with, you know, I don't like the, you know, well, $1 million we can get people in there, or $1 million, it's gonna be about $1.5 million we can get people in there. Because the reason why that causes me anxiety is because this is an old building and it needs to be respected as such. And it's gonna be a municipal building that needs to provide all the same safety features, lighting, the air quality that we're breathing, access as this building does. That building's 250 years old, this building is 20. That building needs to start acting like it's 20 years old, or 2. And so that comes with a cost. And if we do it on the cheap and we don't think it through, it would be an even bigger black eye on the town, because then to your point, taxpayers get resentful because you told me it was gonna be $1.5 million, and now you're standing in front of me, you need another $500,000. You need another $1 million. And now you start ending up in a situation like the church that we toured in Derry, the parish church, where they're 10 years in or 12 years down the road, they're still not done.
Yes, but they're going for a different
I
very
understand,
much.
but
Federal-
you can't drag this project out on and on.
So if I could just finish my
Yeah,
thought.
I'm sorry, and I really,
Yeah,
gonna
so
let
just
you
to finish my
finish,
thought.
and,
There are grades that we're talking about doing, right? There is the minimum, and I think we're coming to a consensus that it's more than 1.5 million just to do the minimum, right?
Yeah.
But we do need to talk. We've said we're going to talk tonight about what else, like
Right.
what could another use be? What could another use be? And those are things that are possible and could be presented. And I'll just say that, you know, the reasons that the town hasn't voted for some things, I would argue, is marketing.
yeah, that could.
Things weren't necessarily presented and sold the way they should have been to get out the vote, or to educate people to the
Right.
point where they could actually rally around it, as opposed to be like, oh, you know.
So,
that's
thank
my
you
point.
for sharing that, and Ray, thank you for voicing your opinion, but I really wanna, just a moment, please. I really wanna get us back on track, and I'm just gonna make an observation here. We've been at this for a couple of months now, and these meetings tend to roll along with a lot of, local opinions. We do have work that we need to get done in the next 30 days, so I don't wanna lose sight of what we need to do. We're, Kirsten, if I'm not mistaken, we're scheduled for a 15-minute presentation to the town council on the 23rd.
That is correct.
And so we need to stay focused over the next few weeks to make sure that we come into that meeting with a reasonable progress report. And I respect everybody's opinion here. I'm not diminishing anything anybody said or trying to inhibit anybody's right to speak their mind. But we do have a job to get done, and that means producing some work. So, sir, you had.
Yeah, John Wilson, I'm on the Senior Resource Committee, and I've lived in this town for 54, 55 years, so I came here tonight is exactly what Ray just brought up, okay? I read in the paper, that basically, we've known about the problem since the Lions moved out, the floor was a problem with structural issues. So a lot of time has gone by, and I was struck by the fact that we haven't opened up that floor and got two or three people that are capable of doing the work to go in there and tell us what has to be done and willing to give us a firm quote, at least at today's prices, what it's gonna cost to fix it. And without doing that, I think you people are just wasting time, because you better find out whether or not it makes any sense at all to work on that building. And I'll guarantee you, whatever you think you know about that building now, when you open up that floor and take a good look, foot by foot, all the way around that building, you're gonna find out things that you're gonna say, oh, wait, well, what about this, right?
Correct.
Okay,
We ought to get that done, and it's beyond my comprehension. We've been screwing around with this for over a year now, we haven't done the basic thing. It's like, it's the absolute basic thing, before you start deciding what you're gonna do with it, you better find out whether or not it's gonna cost to fix the basic problem, which is the structure underneath it. And Ray's right, if the foundation's got a serious problem, we don't know we can do the kind of a concrete pour that we're talking about here right now, until no one's gonna give you a firm quote and guarantee it without getting in there and really inspecting what you have under there.
so thank you for that.
Well, I was just gonna say, I believe it was my understanding that we did open up the floor. It has been looked at, and then when Weston and Sampson came in, it was one of their suggestions to do the pour to sound up the floor because of the fact of the deterioration. I think there's a detailed report of it online of when they ripped it up, and we passed it around actually here, but amongst ourselves.
Was there,
Wait a minute, Dave, you
So,
wanted
so,
to
so
respond?
I just wanna bring us back to the beginning of what I stated at the beginning of the meeting. So, in the packet, you have the email exchange between myself and the representative for Weston and Sampson. And so we had done our analysis of the building, again, in terms of structurally sound, there was nothing observed by those engineers that cried like, you're wasting your time, this building is about to fall down, in fact, board it up and don't let anybody in here immediately. There was no concerns like that, none whatsoever. The floor sagging, not collapsing, but sagging, is a concern. It is not a structural concern to the building. For the floor, yes, but not for the building as a whole. So, just to clarify, in the next, where I was going before we pulled up anchor and said, let's just get some quick quotes, let's form a committee, let's have a public meeting, whatnot, you'll see that the due diligence investigations, which was next up on the plate. And right there is the very first bullet, is structural assessment. So they were gonna do a more, make sure that, yep, okay, we can do the process that we were talking about for the floor, and what have you. General conditions, the front crawl space, main hall, whatnot. Site survey, start getting actual grades, shots, the septic system location and assessment. Again, I said at the beginning of the meeting, we didn't get into any of that stuff. I tried to keep the initial expense for the evaluation of that building to a minimum. I didn't wanna go in there and spend $50-something thousand right away, so. Hazardous materials assessment, the facility programming, start establishing that phased approach. So these were the next steps that were gonna be up and coming before we stop the process of going down that road.
well, it needs to be done.
So
They haven't been done, they need
I
to
don't
be done.
disagree, I don't disagree with you, Ray, I don't. But we stopped at that point and took a turn, at the direction of the board, to, get some public support, and whatnot, as we started to look at some general, numbers on what the totality of the project would cost. So, sticker shock, call it if you will, but before we took the next step in the process of doing the building, we took an abrupt turn, so.
All right, so that
Well,
Does that
so-
clarify what?
So that hasn't been done, it needs to be
Got
done.
it.
But
And what?
We
and
were,
I'll
I
rec-
was stopped in that
Yeah,
process.
so,
Okay,
so part of our.
so here we are.
All right,
Correct.
fine. Dave, you have something you want to say?
Yes, I brought this up last meeting, I've tried to bring it up a couple of times. The New Hampshire Preservation Alliance
Dave, can I
has-
stop you there, because I'm leading into that, if I may.
Okay, they have 12 consultancies. They're not people that will come in and do the work. They will tell you what might be needing to be done. And they're specialists in this sort of construction,
And we met
in
with,
building to them.
we met with one of them, I can't remember the gentleman's
Yeah.
name, but,
We had one came to a building there at one time, but
and he pretty much had,
Yeah.
we pretty much had the exact same vision, expression, and understanding of the building as everything
Yeah.
that's right here.
yeah.
So what I just passed around, last week I shared verbally my observations of the walkthrough that we did recently.
Larry,
And,
this was exceptional because we could bring this to the council. You detailed everything that took place. Thank you.
thank you. So, we're not gonna, I don't wanna go through it, you can read it at your
Very
leisure,
well
but it echoes what I talked about last week. Take the time to read it. This is being circulated amongst the people who were part of that walkthrough.
Exceptional.
Thank you for your feedback, Dave, you've already provided your feedback to
Yeah.
Kirsten. And what I asked them to do is to take a look at this draft and make sure that I didn't overlook anything or misrepresent anything that we talked about during that. But Dave, to your point, on the final page under next steps, you'll see that I think one of the things we have to take as action items with this committee immediately moving forward is to identify the building preservation expert that you
Yes,
were
I mean,
talking
it's
about.
a list of 12 of them. Any one company will
Right.
come in, and they don't cost a fortune.
The hazmat end of it needs to be addressed,
Hmm.
and the ADA compliance. And just as a reminder, one of the things that we need to be concerned about is trying to do something from an ADA standpoint piecemeal that's gonna trigger a situation where we have to go all in on it. And that was one of the things that we discussed when the chairman of the town council and the town manager were here a couple of weeks ago. They're concerned. So I'm putting this on the table, you can read it later on, but I think one of the action items that we need to move forward fairly quickly on is to start identifying those external resources that need to be brought to the table for that reason. And Dave, you may have already identified people that we can consider.
As far as New Hampshire Preservation is concerned?
No, that and the ADA and the hazmat.
Well, I think, Sherry, were you gonna reach out, as I understood?
Yes, so Chief Butler is looking into the hazmat person at the state level for us.
Okay,
So I'm sure, I'm sure that he'll get back to us soon on that. And
and then, so Dave, if you can take that as an action item and get a list of those get a list of the preservation experts that you're referring to.
Yeah, it's online.
Well, just to read it into the record and make it part of our minutes.
Okay,
If you
yeah.
would do that, that would be great.
Okay, I can send you an email to that as soon as I get home if I,
That's fine. But
have we got an email address for someone? Who should I send it
you
to?
can send it to me if you want.
yeah,
Okay,
Still, sure, so do
Yeah.
that, and then by next meeting too, but my hope is that it's a free consultant that would come out to assess from the state, but we'll see what Chief.
from the hazmat perspective.
Yeah, that's what I'm really hoping for. but
Derek,
this'll
do you
be-
know of any, from an ADA compliance standpoint, do you know of any consulting firms that we can identify at least as a starting point? That can help guide us on that?
Is there a big expense in that, Derek, or is it something, again, that maybe someone would come out and not charge?
I can
Small
ask a
amount.
favor.
That's what I was looking for,
From-
that's where I was going, there you go.
the historic
Yeah.
preservation thing, they are consultancies
Yeah.
that
We know we're gonna have
charge.
a fee,
They aren't
yeah,
going,
we're gonna have
there's
a
going to
little
be a
fee there.
fee, but you're not talking
Yeah.
tens of thousands of dollars.
Just, yeah, and then
Um,
Derek, if someone would, cause that's maybe a quicker, but more detailed still.
Yeah.
But that would be wonderful if you did have a.
Yeah, I
contact.
can, Nickerson Design, they're right in Bedford. I've worked with them a lot and we're
Oh,
pretty close, so
just
I
sort of,
can,
yeah,
yeah.
that overview and thoughts, and then they could bid on the project down the road too.
Yeah, they actually build all the dairy medical centers, so,
Wonderful,
yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah, the other direct, pointer we could use is what state resources are available to us so that we can try to get up to speed on this before, you know, we recommend a plan to do any modifications to the
Yeah,
plan.
yeah, and I can do the same for other items as well. Obviously, I would have used the same from the concrete perspective. From electrical perspective, I actually already spoke to a friend of mine who owns a company right in Derry. He said that he was willing to come look at it and then also work through some of the like grants that are currently going on right now as well, especially from like lighting perspective. If you were to switch over to more energy efficient, as we were talking about, there's a lot of grant things going on right now. So if we could get that involved, then it reduces our total cost. Same thing for an HVAC. There's a guy right in town that I've known forever, and he owns dry air systems. His company isn't in town, but he lives in Londonderry, still has kids in the school system.
Wonderful.
So, yeah, there's definitely people I can start reaching out to, and that's one of the things I wanted to cover later in the meeting, but I didn't want to
Yeah.
get involved in what everything is already going on. So I figured I was gonna bring that up after we spoke about the potential options for
Okay,
building and
that's
stuff.
great.
But yes, there's many we could reach out to locally.
I think what, as, you know, we've been meeting, you know, we've had meetings for the last 2 months, and so as this has evolved, you know, we've covered a lot of this stuff, but we need to focus in on the presentation we're gonna make, the interim presentation we're gonna make to the town council on the 23rd. Again, it's 15 minutes, so it's gonna be very high level, but as we look at what we've been asked to do and what we've been able to accomplish, that's what we need to be able to present. And there were a couple of blind spots. The ADA component has been a blind spot. The hazmat has been a blind spot. You know, we want to not lose sight of the preservation. The other important thing that is on the agenda for tonight is to get into deeper discussion about how the building might be used. And that needs to be presented to the town council as well. And if anybody thinks I'm missing anything, what I'm trying to do is, you know, we do not have a charge beyond the end of September. And for us to proceed with any more work beyond that point, the town council has to extend our charge. So I'm trying to get us focused on what do we need to do over the next few weeks to close the gaps from an information standpoint, understanding that there's a lot more work that needs to be done on this as the process moves forward. So I really want us to focus on closing those gaps and making sure that we present as complete a picture as we can on the 23rd. And then there will be a final report that we need to produce, you know. Ray,
Are you suggesting it's gonna be sunsetted at the end of September?
I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just saying the fact is that
That's our
our
first
charge
charge.
expires at the beginning of October. It's not an open-ended.
So the town council is gonna have to decide whether to
Right.
continue.
Whether this group is gonna continue doing what we're doing or reformulate a new.
Yeah, and just one other thing, and we're talking about money here. Is there any money available from the town, supposing that we want to have some expertise,
Yeah,
either
we've asked
electrical,
that.
plumbing, whatever, to come in? Is there any money available?
Well, I think that's something we can put on the table on the 23rd. Right now, from a practical standpoint, the 23rd is 3 weeks away. So for us to go out to bid on anything at this point.
No, I'm not suggesting go up a bit, but I'm just wondering.
Yeah, my sense is there is. I think the
Yes,
question
yeah.
was asked of the town manager when he
That we
was a
could
meeting.
bring
And
something to
yeah,
him with his
I mean, it was a little
resources.
vague, but there was an
Yeah.
indication that there is money
Yeah.
available to.
Yeah, and just one other thing, and that is, I was down in Salem, and the old Salem Town Hall, which Dave's probably familiar with, they are now doing a restoration on it, okay? And they have, one of those thermometers out front.
That's, oh,
Yeah.
no
Okay.
kidding, what I had
And,
said
and so, you know, that might be something to think about.
They really
And by the way, they are also getting some grant money. I didn't really check into it, but we definitely should check into what is available for grant money for something
Yeah.
like this.
Well,
And we can learn from others.
yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Ray, because that is part of our charge to consider, aside from taxpayers, what other sources of revenue. And if you'd be willing to do some investigation
Yeah,
on that
I'll
front,
gladly do that.
that would be great.
You wanna
I
research
appreciate
LTAP,
that.
and that.
Derek, you
so
had your
that-
hand up.
What?
That project was in its infancy when I was leaving there. And
Yeah.
So those grants that they're utilizing is from LTAP.
LTAP,
Yeah, yeah.
what does that stand for?
Land, something in planning. I can't remember off the top of my head.
It's not L-CHIP.
I'm sorry, LCHIP.
LCHIP, okay.
LCHIP's another acronym.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, but yeah, they've raised through, businesses and community people and charity and stuff like that.
That's what we need to think about.
Great, yeah, if you can look into that,
Yeah, I
that
will.
would be good.
I will.
Derek, you, and then Dan, you have your hand up as well.
One statement and one very fast question as well, and the statement will be pretty quick. Going back to getting money from townspeople, right? Whether it's donations or taxes. I just wanted to touch on your point as well, that people are willing, right? So I think everybody knows that I, aside from my normal job, I also coach at the high school. And if people have kids in the school still, each team has to do a fundraiser. For soccer alone, our fundraiser goal is $40,000. And we just started it 2 weeks ago, and we are already halfway there. So, and that is just the boys on the team and the girls on the team from the girls soccer team literally go into the app, and they have to text a minimum of 25 people that they know within the app, and it tells them, I'm trying to get money for this, and then there's prizes and giveaways and stuff, right? But they're already just the soccer teams alone are already halfway to their $40,000 goal. I know that the volleyball team is doing the same thing. Their goal was a little bit more, but they're already almost halfway at their goal. And this is 2 weeks. So the town is willing to give back. It just has to be for the right reasons.
And marketing. Like
And marketing,
you
right?
said,
And that's what it is.
right,
It's a quick, easy thing, and it
Yeah.
constantly pings them until they
My
say no, or
goodness.
they're gonna give the funds for it, right? And then the last quick question was, if we start going to some of these kind of friends and people we all know to just take a look, is there a possibility to get a key? Be-
That is the catch,
Yeah, because it's gonna be on their free time, and
Right.
in some cases, it may be like a last minute, hey, I have time right now,
Right
can I get
now,
over
yeah.
there? Can I meet you there? Is there any possibility of doing that? Even if the key is left here somehow, and we can like check it out and check it back in, or something like that, or a lockbox. Oh,
Yeah.
a lockbox would be
Lockbox
perfect.
is a great
Yeah,
idea.
so, I've been kind of the gatekeeper, if you will.
Okay.
For some time now.
Yeah.
And, we have similar arrangements where the only people that are even still doing anything over there, as was an honor of, the lease being, ended, was, for sales, for yard sales that the Lions do and the trees. So, the Lions have been great with me, that we work in that fashion, that if they're gonna enter the building, they let me know, just so that we know,
Yeah.
so when people are driving by, they know the areas they're not allowed to go into and everything else for safety reasons and whatnot. So yeah, that's certainly, access is not an issue.
Okay.
And I'd be even happy to meet people there, and if they have questions, I'll answer them to the best of my ability, so.
Perfect. And then I
not
think
an issue.
is your number is probably on this email too, right? Cell phone number.
Not my cell, no, but I can.
Okay, would that be the
share.
best way to get, like, for the last minute type
Of
things?
course.
Okay, okay.
And
Dan,
Dave
you had
does
something you
answer all
wanted
the
to-
time.
I-
He does answer all the
Lives
time.
with me.
I'll just make sure that I grab your phone number, so.
Absolutely,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
No problem.
So all I was gonna say is, in sort of echoing your points, Larry, about, if, what we're gonna present to the town council, I think the first thing that would be part of that is the one thing that we haven't yet talked about, and I haven't been at all the meetings, but I've looked at the minutes, which are the potential uses.
Right.
Mhm.
That's on
can
the
we-
agenda for tonight, yeah.
Can we
Yeah.
do that?
Yeah.
Frank, you handed this to me the other night. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm not sure why it's in my hand, but I did. I felt like I was in a relay race, and I went, where am I running? Anyway,
I was asked to get that.
Is this original material, or is this a copy of,
Well, that's a copy.
okay, well, I,
The town,
good, so when I jumped at my desk to put out the fire, I didn't have to worry about that. Dave, I just have one quick question for you. This is the plan for the floor, the last floor replacement in 2014.
Yeah.
What did we spend on that, the town?
Ooh, I wanna say it was 27,000?
I do remember somebody saying 20.
Yeah,
So
I think it was
Yeah.
20, I think it was
Yeah.
27,000 was the, now that did not include, I believe they spent an additional 1,700
Yeah.
for a firm to do a design for the way it was.
Well, I'm just trying to get a ballpark handle on it.
It
I
was
mean, it
less than-
obviously wasn't a lasting solution.
Yeah, it was less than 30 grand,
Okay,
yeah, so I was confident in that.
thanks.
Yeah, and that was the, I know, you guys have a lot of work to do, and so that was the purpose of, I had already done some of this work. And so just to give you ballpark numbers,
Yeah.
so that you didn't think like, oh, well, the electrical might only be 20 grand, well, actually, it's 90. So at least you kinda had a general
No, it's
idea.
very
No, we
helpful.
appreciate
Really
it.
helpful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dave, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem, I'm gonna still stay and I'll just
Okay.
move back here, but, John.
Larry, so the charge for the next meeting then, is it that you want like Derek, myself to try, because I think we need to go to the council with some real numbers on those three main topics, like hazmat, what are, an inspector has looked at it, and, this is what it could possibly be, the same with, what you're gonna be, because I think they need some concrete information too, plus what we hope to do with.
Yeah, I'm not sure we're gonna be, well, our final report is due in October
Right.
sometime, but
Yeah,
I'm not sure how much we can get done between
Yeah.
now and the 23rd.
right,
But I think of this as a thermometer,
right.
right? And right now, those thermometers are empty.
That's
Yeah.
exactly
So
right,
anything we
yeah.
can do to kind of
To
move the
move it
mercury
out,
up to 2.
Right.
So, it's a game of inches, so I just think that if we can start that process, we may or may not be in a position to give them, hard numbers in terms of what it's gonna cost to do that, but at
Yeah,
least.
yeah.
And I
Go
think with that too, going back to, like the ADA compliance perspective and all of that stuff. It's the one point I would like to make is that it is difficult, right? Because we're gonna ask them what needs to be done. But if we change the design at all, that could completely change
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
right? So, I would say minus the hazmat, that needs to be done, and then, just definitely from a foundational perspective needs to be done. And then I think the other piece of that is, once we decide what 3 or 4 things we think we could present, I think the next step is then to get a design on those 3 to 4 ideas. And it could be, the 5th idea could be demolition, which I know none of us here want, but I think if you show the town that there's a cost to demolition
Yeah,
as
that's
well,
so
That's true.
but I think the third step is really, once we have those options, to then get a design. Because once you have a design, that's when you can really start saying, okay, ADA compliance, electrical, HVAC, because now you have something, exactly as you were speaking about earlier, you have something for them to go off of
Right.
for specific numbers and not kind of more
If
roundabout.
you read my email, that's,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of stole your thoughts too, but
No, and I think
but
Benchmarking.
yeah,
that should be one of our recommendations
yeah.
as we come out of this. I mean, there's only so much work we can get done in the next 30 days or so, but if we've identified the key uses,
Yeah.
the key issues that need to be addressed, and your recommendation about, translating some of those ideas in terms of use into a conceptual design.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's, and then it's up to the town council to decide if they want to pursue any of those.
Exactly. Yep.
All right, so, thank you, Dave. I guess we're into new business now. So last week, we started to talk about the use cases that need to be made. And we've talked a lot about various uses as we've gone through this process over the last couple of months. But I did ask that we all do a little bit of a homework assignment and come up with our ideas on what this building can be used for moving forward. And John, thank you for turning in your homework before the end of before the beginning of class. But if you want to take a minute from, take a little bit of time from taking minutes, you want to like give us an overview of what you have on that
Yeah,
document?
Jen, that would be
Oh,
nice.
that's it.
It's called the Secretary's Report, John.
What do we wanna do?
Just share with us a little bit of what you have there, that you have that written down, your
Well,
ideas.
Larry asked us all to, he gave us homework, and he said, go back and figure out what you would use the hall for, or what we think the hall should be used for. That's all it is, and I basically broke it down into three phases. The most significant is that the building is located in the Londonderry non-commercial district. It stands right up, just like that picture that Dave was talking about. It stands right up for everybody to see and use. So who's gonna use this? I would like to see a reasonable number of nonprofit people specifically use this above everybody else. And then when I say nonprofit, I don't mean all nonprofits, because a lot of them are not the area that we're thinking about. I hate to be, I'm not a homer, but for example, charities like the Lions Club or the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, the Rotary Club, the Londonderry Women's Club, agencies that would look for a place to meet and utilize the facility once it's been repaired. Second option was that, and I don't know if they want to go this route, but somebody was talking about rentals. We've got this big empty building right now, and for almost 50 years we rented the building. And it was done for weddings and birthday parties and showers and family, mostly family gatherings and that type of thing. We took the revenue from these rentals and put it into repairing the building the best way we could. There's other people that would use it. We had driving schools, we had church groups, and I don't mean that most churches have their own facility, but there were quite a few that had to rent our building because they didn't have a place to go. So anyway, long story short, there's a significant number of people that would rent the building, and I'm looking at it mostly for families and groups that live in Londonderry that would want to have a decent sized hall for their party or their anniversary or whatever they decide to do. The third option was that, and I turned it down. I don't like nonprofit organizations that pay their directors and pay their officers and this type of thing. That's not the kind of nonprofit organization that I'm looking into. I'm not going to name any names, but that's an issue. The second part of this is politics and politicians. For example, the Lions Club is strictly non-political. We have some members in our club that happen to be politicians, but they don't turn their ways in and make us do anything that we don't want to do. In the past, we've rented the hall most of the time, refusing to rent to a political group of any sort, and that's hot and heavy right now. We're totally non-political, so when I say rent the hall, I don't mean doing it for people that are running for office or anything like that. That's it in a nutshell.
Great. Thank you, John. Can I have that back?
That's excellent.
Thank you. Anybody else? Who else?
So just to clarify, because that's potential users, right? But if we're talking about potential uses, right? All of those were sort of functions, right? Regardless of who's doing it.
Well, it's endless, there are all kinds of them. Over 50
Sure.
years, they were phenomenal.
Sure. And so I think if, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so but that would be sort of basically restoring it for 1.5 or what, whatever the cost is, right, to open the building safely and everything, to essentially for the same use that it's been used for before.
Effectively using it for the people in the town,
Right. But which is how it's been used, right?
reasonably,
Yeah.
yes.
So my point is that I think that's kind of our base, right? Like that's our first option.
Yeah,
Is sort of to restore it to be used in the way it's been used before. Right? It's kind of our...
Assuming that we follow the guidelines that we're talking about, yes.
Meaning the
I-
guidelines you just discussed, or like the
No,
construction guidelines? and stuff like that?
the kinds that we were just discussing, nonprofits and families. that
Yeah,
have
so I think,
people in
so
town.
here's what I'm trying to distinguish. I think there's two different topics. One is, how is the building gonna be used by whomever? And then you just were talking about who is allowed to use the building, right? And that's, to me, that's two separate questions.
Mhm.
And I respect both of them, right? But if we're trying to say, okay, what are the potential uses? I believe probably our starting point is the use, the same way it has been used in the recent decades,
yes.
as essentially a place, a gathering place.
A rental hall.
Exactly.
And so, and there may be a 1A and a 1B in there, right? Because we talked about this at the last meeting. 1A would be with a fully functioning kitchen. Actually, that would be 1B. 1A would be with just like a food service area, because that's less, right? And then 1B would be with a fully functioning kitchen. And so I'm not ascribing who's using it, I'm just saying what the use is,
Yeah.
right? So could we agree that that's sort of our 1A, our 1B, and then build from there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is that
Yes, sir.
I agree with that, yeah.
okay?
Sounds reasonable.
Yeah. So I think the first, just to make note of it, so the first piece on the table is to have it as a rental hall.
Function space rental, yeah.
Yeah, function rental hall, yeah, exactly.
Keeping the character as it is.
Exactly, yeah, yeah,
As much as
possible.
possible.
Yeah.
I got a call the other night.
Someone wanting to rent
They
it?
wanted to rent a hall.
Yeah.
I said, you're a little bit late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then if I could next, I'm just gonna go based off of what I saw from the town, of what they had suggested. One being and I don't agree and or disagree with either of them, I'm just putting them out there because these are the two that I saw the most, is the SAU building. And the other one is rental for a restaurant and or something of that sorts.
I'm not buying that restaurant.
No.
I'm just putting it out there because that's one of the
But
biggest. That's one of the biggest things I saw from that. Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
giving my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm not.
I
I'm not
believe
into
the
that at all.
impact on the historic nature of that building would be killer.
Yeah, and I would just hesitate to say that if it is the SAU building, then they would have to keep it historical, right? They're renting from the town, so it's the town's building. The town
Yeah.
can say what they can and cannot do from restorations inside. Even if you were to rent it out to a restaurant, a convenience store, whatever it may be, I'm saying rent it, and it doesn't have to be a restaurant, you rent it out to somebody for some sort of a business factor. You, as the town being the ownership of it, can tell them what they can and cannot do in there, right? So I wouldn't say that it would take away from the historical fee in either sense, even from a hall sense, right? We keep it as a hall. We're not taking away from the historical piece of it. We make whoever is in there has to keep it the way it is. You know?
Yes.
Can I ask you a question? Oh, go ahead.
It has to be retained as a whole.
Exactly.
You can't
Yeah,
go throw up partitions and ceilings everywhere.
Right,
Right.
I agree.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, but you said that the most you saw was the SAU building and what else? A restaurant?
Like either like it was like a restaurant or a convenience store or a
Commercial.
for commercial use is
And
basically
you
what
said
it is.
You
And
saw
then-
a lot of that.
And the third one was the hall. Those were the top three.
Keeping it as a whole.
Yeah.
I can't imagine why anybody would think the SAU building would be a good
You know,
use for
I
that.
think
No.
that they did talk about that,
I
but
mean,
I
you
think
can't-
they
that-
dismissed
that-
it.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be dismissed, but I'm just saying
Yeah,
that
it was one of the options.
it's one of their, it's
I
one
think
of
it would be
theirs.
It was
beautiful, but it's
mentioned,
too
right.
small.
It was-
By a bunch of people.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Well,
just don't, I
well,
think the size now, it just.
Can I weigh in on this? One of the things I mentioned early on in this process was the notion of, and this is something you brought up again tonight, Ray, to do some sort of a survey, a more formalized, structured survey of the townspeople in terms of what they would like to see for the building. And I've got experience doing survey design and analysis from my corporate career, and I'd be more than happy to help out with that. But the way you go about it is you would put this was almost like a focus group, the
Yeah.
input that you're referring to. It was an offshoot of the meeting that was held on that Saturday morning, and I was there, so I heard what people were saying, but it's very anecdotal. It's not something that I would stand up and say this is investment grade research because somebody says we should put the school district office there. So I'm happy to help put together at the appropriate time a survey process that we can take to the public and say these were ideas that were floated in the initial polling or interaction with the community. Here's what this committee considered. Nothing out of bounds, but let's get your feedback on what you think is going on with that. So-
Exactly.
Yeah, and I suspect, and I can I get access to that survey, those survey results? I haven't seen those. They might have been.
Yeah, I
presented
can
earlier.
I can reprint. Actually, I still have a printout. It's at work, but I'll bring
Okay.
it to the next.
Because I suspect, having been at that meeting and everything, I think none of us are real excited about the SAU idea or the restaurant or
I
whatever.
don't see how that was made to work.
Well, but I
He
suspect.
tore down a much younger building.
Yeah.
I don't think the school
Yeah.
department is.
No,
Yeah. And I don't think they're
suspect-
interested either.
Well, but you have to think about the community people who might do that. If I'm a community person who's saying, we need something for the SAU, I don't wanna keep paying rent to Kitty Hawk,
Exactly, yeah.
and there's a
That's
building we have to do
an
something
idea.
with, so there's, kill two birds with one stone, like that's,
That's
you know,
probably where it came
and even with the
Exactly.
restaurant thing, I mean, we don't have anything in the town center, like, wouldn't it be lovely if we did?
Yeah.
I don't think any of us in this room feel like it should be that building, but,
Right.
so,
But it is
I- it's-
outside of the box.
Yeah, you give them the option.
and so it's understandable where people, and again, these might be people who are saying, I don't wanna spend a lot of money on that building, so if you can get California Pizza Kitchen to spend the money or whatever,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I think there's legitimate reasons why people would suggest those things, even if
Well,
we don't
the
think they're good.
the SAU
That's
thing
right.
came up, but a couple of meetings ago, as a matter of record, I said, before we break up, I want to acknowledge that the citizen in the community wrote a letter to the editor making a very reasonable case to have the SAU office in that building. And so what I said then, and I'll say again, is that, by state law, the government structure in New Hampshire is that the SAUs, the school administrative units, and the town management are separate government entities. There is some collaboration that goes on between the two, but they are two, bifurcated agencies. And I have my own personal grievances with the SAU situation because I served on school, school district committees where this was kicked down the road many, many times. But we at least acknowledged that this person wrote a letter, that it's something that people are interested in having considered. And my opinion is if the SAU wants to look into this, they have every right to look into this as an option for them. One of the arguments was that we already own the land, which is true, but the town also owns land between the Grange Hall and the police station. And my understanding is that part of that acquisition provided for the notion that if the school district decided they needed to build something, that there was that land was available to them. And I believe the parcel that the old clam shack used to be on, as they affectionately called it, is still available for construction. So, but my feeling is it's certainly legitimate to consider the SAU for that building, but they need to take the initiative to do it. That's Larry's opinion. So.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, these are just things we put to paper, right? And as you stated, we put them out to the public to vote on in a poll or a survey, right? Because if we just want to shove this down the public's throat of this is your only option, no other option, and it gets turned down, we're completely at square one, like I stated earlier. So if we at least put a poll together with a bunch of different options that we all think is reasonable, as well as taking into consideration, again, like I said, what the public has said before. If we agree with it or not, it makes no difference because the town is going to be the one to vote. We are one of the votes, each one of us are an individual vote, but the 8 of us or whatever's in this room, we're only 8 votes out of the entire town, and we're not going to sway it one way or another, right? So if we just make this list and keep it at that, it's just a list that we're going to send out for polling. Then we take the poll results back. That gives us the direction of where to go from the design perspective and then the quoting perspective.
Yeah.
I just don't want to waste our time in just sticking on one idea that can potentially get shot down.
I think that's a matter. That's good due diligence to do something like that.
So if I may, I have another proposal, but I do have some questions that various people in the room might be able to help me answer before I say that. So as far as a function space, right, if we're just talking about that in our town right now, there are others, some, right? There's the YMCA that rents their space for various things. The YMCA.
Oh.
And they're building a new building too,
The
right?
one that's moving,
Even
Yes.
larger,
Yeah.
right?
Right, so they have space right now, and then they're going to have newer space. Right?
Newer, bigger.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
so,
And I will confess, I'm going to confess my ignorance. I've never set foot in the Grange Hall. Is that a function space?
it, for small functions.
Okay, all right. So,
The Boy
Yeah.
Scouts and so forth.
yeah, okay. And we have our schools, which are used quite a bit for various functions, cafeteria, gym, things like that. Sometimes they're more available than others, and
Yeah.
whatever. So we have function spaces in town, and so this could just be another function space, which is what it's been in the last several decades.
That's what's been paying the bills.
Yeah, but we're
It's-
talking
it's
about
not-
private functions. You're not necessarily gonna have a private function at the school or the police department or.
Yeah,
Sure.
the basketball, the gymnasiums, I did see in the paper that the schools were looking to allow people to use those if they were requested ahead of time.
Well,
didn't say
I can
specifically
say
what it
we
was.
use them.
You mean like pickleball?
No, for anything.
No, but
For
just to
any-
clarify,
Always there,
the
right?
spaces I've mentioned, and the Grange is the only one I didn't know about, are all used already by both nonprofit and for-profit entities.
Yeah.
So-
School is,
Schools
Schools
are as
included,
well.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
I
you're
can,
gonna have a birthday party there?
If you let them know.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could kind of do whatever. It's not specific to a sport. You just request the space. Let's
Yeah.
put it like that.
And again, I say this from experience because Ovation Theater Company has used various school
Is there a fee
facilities.
for it, though?
What's that?
Is there a fee for it?
It depends.
Oh, interesting.
In janitorial costs and things like this, right?
Yeah.
So my point is that we have options in town for function space. This is another one, right? Okay. Because what I'm going to propose is that it be a space to utilize that we don't have right now in town. And so then my question, and Dave, you might be the best person here to answer this question, is on the property, how much room do we have to expand?
So, the building itself, or for parking, or?
Structure.
It's not a very big parcel. The complication with it is you get further east on the property to the back.
Mm-hmm.
You have steep grades. It takes right off up to the Appalachian in the back because we had looked at bringing, creating an entrance and exit only to eliminate that through raceway that goes right in front of the building. And we had looked at a couple of variations on how do we circulate the traffic in there. And one thought was to go behind the pavilion and elongate that southerly entrance. But the type of cut we'd have to do into the hillside and the retaining wall and everything, it's just too costly. So I don't know exactly how much square footage you're looking for, but the square footage that we had proposed in the back of the building was not more than a couple more thousand square feet at the back for the additional bathrooms and the kitchen relocation.
And you could go-
But also with the understanding that we were gonna put the septic system back there too, that's gonna take up.
And to the south?
To the south, the property line is right there. We were putting in basically the drive entrance, if you will, and still maintaining, I think it was the 15-foot setback from the neighbor's property line and whatnot.
Right, but I'm saying you can expand to where the parking lot and pavilion currently are. There's
Well, if you took the pavilion down, you can
Yeah.
expand into that area and.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there is some room. I just wanted to let you know as well. So where the stage currently is, it's not enormous, but there is room behind that as well
Right.
in the existing space
And
too.
that's where,
Yeah.
where in the conceptuals that's on the town website and whatnot, you'll see the expansion of the building towards the
Yeah,
back.
that's what I've been looking at.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you. And then just to clarify, and it was very hard to find on the conceptuals in the town, that's why I looked at this. 37 and a half feet the hall, wide by about 49 feet.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
On
So
length.
we'll call it, whatever, 38 by 50, whatever, something.
yeah.
So my point is that is a good size for option 1A and 1B that we've discussed. Although, maybe some expansion if you go with 1B, which is the full kitchen, right? But if we want it to be more, then you have to go bigger. And so exactly how much that could be, to the east, to the south, whatever, to get it to, where you actually have a space that's more like 60 by 50 or whatever, then you can do other things with that space.
Yeah, the
But
conceptuals
you're
we did.
destroying the historic
Well,
building to
so,
do that.
I knew
Not
that
all
was
of
me.
it.
What use are you suggesting?
I would resist destroying any of it.
Well, but would you agree though, David, that right now the walls are not historical, they're just siding?
What?
What? I do not
The
agree with
exterior
that.
walls.
I
What are
do
you-
not
what are you
agree
talking
with
about?
that.
What are you talking about? You don't
Yeah.
even know what the beams are in the walls.
No, I'm talking about the exterior siding is.
Just
Yeah,
like, just
that's covering the clapboards underneath that. Potentially, you could take off that vinyl siding and restore the clapboards.
Or you could move it.
What are you suggesting for use?
I'm suggesting that bigger functions, theater functions,
You're talking about changing it into a commercial space.
No.
I mean,
no.
I'm absolutely vehemently opposed to that kind of thing.
I hear you. I'm presenting another option.
well,
Okay.
present it in the survey if you want.
yeah,
I'm trying to present it right now.
yeah.
Okay.
I would say we put that on the list and send it out for the survey.
Yeah.
I don't think
So
any
if I
idea.
can
is
just
bad,
finish
yeah.
my thought.
Yeah.
We do not have a performance space in the town of Londonderry. We are the only town in New Hampshire that does not have an auditorium associated with our town.
Well,
The only town. It's a black mark on our community. And I'm not talking about an 800-seat, $9.8 million several years ago auditorium. I'm talking about a barely adequate performance space that could be created. But that's different. That's
Yeah,
different.
but it would have been one.
I think we have to preserve the building as a historic building. You don't go and rebuild it.
I believe that that it's possible to preserve the historic aspects of the building and still expand it and do more with it.
I doubt that. I seriously doubt that.
Could, Kirsten, would you be able to clarify for us, just when Mike was here and Chad? My understanding is that they wanted us to take the existing structure and determine what we could use it for and what it would take financially to bring it back to using the existing structure. But I thought that was our quest, and these are all other incredible ideas, but I thought that's what they wanted
Well,
us to do.
I mentioned this in the vetting for my getting on this committee, and so it's in the public record that this
Yeah.
could be an
I
option.
don't know, Kirsten, just.
And what I can tell you, regardless of the lack of support in this room, I can tell you that there is a lot of support in the community for this. And it doesn't have to throw the historical baby out with the bathwater.
I
There
don't
are,
see how you can avoid that.
well,
The building at that dimension, that original hall, was built in 1770
mhm.
to a particular style and size. That's what we should be preserving. You don't knock the walls down and push it out another 30 feet.
I do
So-
agree that we need in
Can
town
I,
place.
can I just interject just a little bit? And
An
I hate to,
auditorium.
but I'm going to.
Yeah.
So the stage itself, just to draw a nice line of delineation here. The stage itself isn't original to it's not,
Good
No,
point.
the back end is.
it's not historic. That was an add-on that was done
When would that have been done?
at some point in time.
Yeah.
I
The whole back end.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I would assume,
Go back.
I would just assume that since they had town meetings in there and such, that at some point they wanted the dignitaries
Oh, right.
up on a pulpit of sorts, and
50s,
the people
60s.
were, gathering in the hall space itself. To that end, I was, really taken aback with what the parish church had done, with some of the enhancements, if you will, of their stage and whatnot. But obviously it was quite more impressive because it was of a particular era and it was a restoration project. But some of the vision that I was, just again morphing everybody's ideas that were coming at me when we were working together was there was going to be some form of enhancement or bettering of that stage to maybe make it a little bit larger, a little bit more accessible, and that expansion on the back was going to try to do that so there'd almost be a background area so that people could then come out from the back and access the stage, so that if you had a wedding and there's a DJ, or you have a small play or a children's play or whatever, that could be really, and the columns could be, we could do some more research with the historical society and whatnot, and maybe those columns could look better than just the T111 siding that's on it and corner molding and paint. And so I understand what you're driving at. I understand a bigger vision and bigger picture. But our thought too was also expanding off the back was the easy, and within the footprint of the width of the building, so that it didn't take away, so that if you 50 years from now, if you had another God shining his flashlight on the building across the common, it's still gonna look the same. You're not gonna notice if the back of the building goes another 20 feet. You're not
No,
going
that's-
outside the footprint, you're not going
I
higher
would
than
agree to that.
and you could do the more modern stuff that you needed at the back to make the building more attracting and have a better venue there and whatnot.
Yeah, so let me, with that
Yeah.
in mind, let me amend that thought to say, okay, don't go wider, but go deeper.
Yeah.
And potentially also go south, right turn. You know, if you need that space there, you could still add additional things, essentially where the pavilion is now.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
For, you know, support,
Yeah.
for example, if you go so far back and you don't have room for the restrooms, they're the ones that go over, you know,
And I think
toward
that,
the pavilion or whatever.
I think that plays right into the importance of understanding what your end phase is. It brings back full circle to the beginning of the meeting, because if you put the septic system too close, I mean, that may be something that, yeah, that is an idea. But wait, we put the septic system, you know, right there. So now we gotta move the septic system, so that, or now that vision or that option down the road someday is
Yeah.
gone,
So my point being that this is a potential use, is to expand the building, and even if it's simply expanding east and perhaps adding to the
Put
south.
an L on the back.
Yeah.
Kinda like a dog leg.
That provides additional uses. And I think it was Ray, you said, well, then it's a commercial building. It's still a rental property, right? Like, I would tell you right now that our school arts departments would probably prefer to use that than the options they have right now, because they're horrible. And I mean, it's a shame that our high school drama department has to use the Dairy Opera House, which is
I
not a
agree.
great facility,
Yeah.
by the way. And doesn't have another option. Neither does and I'm not talking about just theater, any of our arts programs, they just don't have anything. So I believe the schools would use it. I know that community entities would use it. And it would still be a function space. And because honestly, like, I'm not talking about building a theater and it can only be used as a theater, because it's not big enough for that still, even what I'm talking about. So what you would still do is just have it be a big empty box, and then people can use it however they want, right? Like, they can, if you were doing an artistic presentation, you could build a stage on one end and do it sort of the traditional way, or you could put it in the middle and people can sit around. Like, there's a lot of, it's called a black box theater, essentially, which is to say it's a big open space, and you configure it however you want to do, you know, the type of art you're trying to create. So that's all I'm presenting as an option, is to say that if you can make it bigger, you can do more, and you can do something we don't have in our town right now, because we do have other function spaces.
But just
So-
like, just going back to.
So my
What
thought
was-
on this is that this goes back to the conversation that we talked about having an end plan versus a phase one. There is nothing, I mean, the initial plan did include some alterations and some expansion in the back, correct? So there's nothing to say that
Could be more
a
robust.
future expansion would be like a phase 4 or phase 5 thing that you'd be working towards and considering when you're phase 1. There's nothing to say that that couldn't be, particularly now that you alleviated the historic concerns by talking about just expanding out the back, which we've already established is not historic, right? So that is, it's absolutely on the table for a future plan. Do I think that's what the council is looking for in 2 weeks, a plan to expand it? I can't speak for them, but I think that would likely not be phase 1 in their mind, because you've already outlined tonight a number of things that you have to do with the building before you do anything. But certainly future space of the building, regardless of the use, future build outs is something you would want to have in mind before you started building anything in phase 1. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and
So-
again, if you have a vision, then you do certain things differently,
Right.
and you don't do certain things, you know, if they're gonna inhibit that or whatever. So for example, if phase 1 didn't include an expansion, I would argue, get rid of the stage, like, that's useless. Because it's, you know, allow for the fact that it can just be one level, that kind of thing. But if our charge is to present potential uses, then I think it's fair to say this is a potential use.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would honestly put it on there, and I would say that I think when we present in 3 weeks, it is presenting. I think part of that presentation will be us presenting the fact that, in my opinion, and everybody can touch on this too, I do not think that we can meet that original goal of phase one without truly knowing what we're doing for the future, right? We can't,
Yeah.
going back to what we spoke about earlier, we don't want to do the minimum to open it because it's actually, and I can tell you this from experience, it is going to cost us more to then do phase 2 and 3, right?
You wanna hold it?
Yes. It is going to cost us more.
With a talking stick.
Yeah, it's going to cost us more to do phase 2, 3, and I don't think we need to go past a phase 3 in my opinion. Phase 2 and 3, if we just do the minimum on phase 1. So I think in phase 1 should have been set as planning and having our designs, and then phase 2 would have been quotations and sending out to the town for bid, and then phase 3 would have been do it. And that's my professional opinion on what we should do. You know, I am not a builder, but in my job I was as an operations director, I was in charge of all of our build outs, right? I was overseeing all of our build outs. So I was with the general contractors. I was with the people actually doing the work, not just the general contractor. I was with the designers. I was with the people who were picking out what they were putting up for wallpaper and curtains and all that, right? So it phase 1, and I'm not saying that this phase 3 needs to be a year-long thing. We could be ready by January, right? And say as soon as spring comes, we're building, right? It doesn't have to be this forever thing. And it could be, if the town votes on yours, that's what it is. If the town votes on just the hall as it is, that's what it is. If the town votes on the SAU, you'd have to talk to the school board now, right? But if the town votes on commercial use, whether it's a restaurant, a convenience store, what was the other thing they had said? A farmer's market, right? It's there, it's voted on. We have our quotes in hand for every single design option. Town votes on it. We start building in spring, right? That is my opinion, and I'd like you to voice in on that too, because I know that there are some issues with winter coming too.
So couple thoughts that come to bear in mind that listening to you. So that is the process, again, reference my email, but
Yeah.
that was the next step in the process of doing that. You know, the design and the planning and strategic planning and whatnot. You can do them, and this is more way out of my area of expertise that I even like to step into, but the political realm and the town manager and whatnot. But you can have non-binding referendum articles that they can just be messy though. And if you have a whole laundry list of things, then it can get complicated. But you can make it as simple as do you vote in favor of saving the preservation of the building, or tear it down? That would be a simple warrant article. But it's non-binding. Doesn't mean we're going to do it or not. But it's a litmus test as to what's out there.
See what the public opinion is.
I think before you just blindly would do something like that, all the while you could be doing the other work that we talked about that precedes it. But the thing about that would be, it's going to kind of give you a good gauge, but you wouldn't want to blindly just put it out there. I think you need a strong, robust, public outreach and PR. Perhaps, you do the Londonderry Review. Perhaps there's a show that takes place there and
Right, that's a nice thought.
educates it. Perhaps we have small pieces that the historical people talk about the importance of it. Perhaps we have younger people in town, or the Lions can sit there and talk about the history of their experiences there and whatnot. I think that's what we're missing. I mean, I think everybody in this room is here because we care about the building. The disconnect is we don't know what everybody else in town does think. We think we know, but do we really know? And I I think in order to get people, if you just put it on there, Reverend Morrison Meetinghouse, I don't think people, most people might not even know what we're talking about.
That's true.
Quite honestly. And so, so
The
there needs to be,
high chance a lot of them would associate it with a historical
Yeah.
society
I-
building.
That's true.
what I do
and so
wanna
if
say
we
is-
get more of those types of discussions and then limited times as to what has been, making that paper about this committee, then I think, that would be more productive to meeting the goals of what we're all trying to do with that building.
It's education and,
Yeah.
and
Can we get the survey maybe out in the newspaper?
Pardon me?
Could we get a survey into the paper?
I think we just gotta get to the council meeting first.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
Oh.
how you get it out to the public is, I mean, it's one of the things we'd have to consider, but,
And
Yeah.
surveys,
We gotta get
surveys
to-
are great,
So-
but are we, like, the master plan steering committee, I think, is not getting a lot of response to their survey?
They've gotten 450 so far,
Oh, that's, okay,
and that's just in the beginning, so they still have about another 2 months to go.
I still
okay,
gotta finish
And-
mine.
that's better than I thought.
And we can make it very easy. Let's go into the future, right? And whatever that survey is, have it be a QR code. So all people have to do is quickly snap the picture with the QR code, and your options are right there in front of you, and take it.
it's 8 o'clock and, 8:04 actually. I do have something I'd like to add to your presentation. So I'm gonna speak as a member of the Arts Council, and I'm pretty open-minded in terms of potential uses for this, this historic building. But I do have a personal interest in promoting the arts through that, making it a gathering place, a meeting place for the public. But I think there's an opportunity to do more with it in terms of supporting the arts. I was on the auditorium study committee back in the day, and I was not happy with the outcome of that whole process. And I won't get into what I think went wrong with it, but
Bring that back.
Yeah.
anyway, I'm going to talk. Much of what I wrote on my homework has already been covered, so I won't be redundant here. But let me talk about active programs that the Arts Council could plug into that building immediately, and then talk about potentials. I think that we can consider as well. So we have a program that's been mothballed for 2 years called Art in Action. We used to do it at the Max Farm Stand. Andy was always generous in making that available to us when the farm stand was closed over the winter. It's a 2-day event. We bring in artists who are actually doing work, and it's open to the public to come in and interact with the artists. We have no home for that right now. The Arts Cafe is something we've been doing for probably 6 or 7 years now. It's a springtime or wintertime coffee house where we bring in artists to sell their work, and we bring in musicians to perform. We've been moving around town to various locations, churches, the senior center in the North Village. That could be plugged in immediately. We ran a plein air event last summer for the first time in collaboration with the New Hampshire Artists Association. And we had no place to base that. And plein air is where the artist goes out in nature and paints something, and then they come back together. The way we had to structure it was, we had to meet at the town hall because people needed access to water for watercolors. They needed access to restrooms. So we gathered in this room, which the artist felt was kind of weird. Gave them a map that Kirsten put together, an awesome map of, scenic sites around the center of town. And what we were trying to do is showcase the beauty of the center of Londonderry. And
That's really cool.
the Morrison house, or the Reverend Morrison Meetinghouse is part of that panorama. We had no place to gather afterwards, and the weather was a little bit dicey, but we ended up picnicking on the bandstand and displaying the work on the backdrop of the
Concrete.
on the concrete. And unfortunately, we had and there were artists from all over the state that came in for this. Talk about raising Londonderry's profile. And unfortunately, when they asked for restrooms, we had to point to the Porta Johns in the parking lot. So that's an example of why we need to revitalize this building. The other thing I'm thinking of, and I haven't floated this with the people that at the core of Concerts on the Common. I'm very heavily involved in that, but one of the ideas that we've talked about in the past that has not been practical is when we run a concert on the Common, we did 12 concerts this summer. We had over 5,000 people attend. The last concert, we know we had over 1,000 people on that Common for the final performance of the year to kick off Old Home Day. I would like to float the idea of having an opening act for concerts on the Common in the pavilion and this is something we could do next summer, at the pavilion. And what I have in mind is that we make it open to the youth of our community that are musicians. Try not to get crazy with it in terms of how much gear they're gonna bring, but even a small acoustic performance, and have maybe some food service up there, some of the high school groups. I know the math club used to sell pizza at concerts on the Common, but fundraising for the clubs and organizations in the high school, having high school kids or young adults performing, for an hour or two before the concert kicks off, and just try and bring them into the more tightly into the community and introduce them to this.
Londonderry's Got Talent.
Yeah,
LGT.
yeah. So that's something I'm gonna put on the table next week at our meeting. So that's something that we can do very quickly. We don't have to open the building to do that. We can use the pavilion and get some porta potties up there, and really try to revitalize that thing as, a center for artistic endeavors. That's the scope of what we have going on right now. I mean, we've run acoustic mic, open mics. We were using the Parmenter barn for music sessions. But other things we can do are to have poetry and literature, literary readings there, workshops focused on the arts, including painting, poetry, drama, and music, having small ensemble dramatic performances and dance recitals. I mean, I was on the auditorium committee. I had a dream of what that could have been, and it didn't materialize, unfortunately. But there may be a way to leverage this building in the short term, where we can start to bring the arts into that building and give people another reason to get in there and use it. So this I don't like, but I have an open mind. Comedy nights. Comedy nights.
Those were super fun. I went to the Lions once before they shut down. They
You're,
were really
you're,
fun.
you're our first performer then.
Yeah. No, and then what's the one that used to be in Londonderry, but the Tupelo, right?
Tupelo,
Their
yes.
comedy nights are like a massive hit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Dave, you have something?
Yeah.
Yeah, Larry, along those lines, what I think would also be, again, with the, in the public relations department, all these groups that you're contemplating you think would want to be in there, wouldn't it be great if we had a packet full of letters from, most of these organizations have a chairman, a president, whatever, a simple letter from a president or a chairman of their boards and saying, hey, if this became available to us in Londonderry, our club's interested.
How would
I
you use
mean,
it?
the Wildcats, may wanna have a fundraiser there for the football and cheerleading. The Laugh may wanna have a comedy night.
Yeah.
The Veterans Association may wanna have something there. That's gonna give you a gauge on community support.
Yeah.
If you have a binder full of 24 to 36 organizations, whether even Lions, the Kiwanis clubs, I don't know. The list goes on and on, even the school district, to your point that they may wanna do things. It's easy, you can't get something like that for throwing birthday parties and weddings. I mean, those things are gonna come, but all those different organizations and civic groups that you think may wanna, see that, it'd be good to just have a simple, even if it's an email.
Yeah.
That, hey, this is the desire, that these groups in town would definitively use that building, would benefit from it greatly.
Good point.
Also gets you votes.
Exactly.
All right, this has
It's
been
endorsed by blah, blah, blah.
this has been a very productive and, I think, professional meeting tonight, and I appreciate everybody's contributions. Anything else that anybody wants to cover?
Could I just say one, and this goes exactly with what we're talking about right now. So could we list it out just so we have it as one, and then A, B, C? So 1A would be the space as it is now, refurbished, fixed up, right? as a rental space with no kitchen.
Yeah.
1B is space as it is now, obviously moving bathrooms, all that stuff, with a full kitchen. 1C, space for the arts with the space with yours. Would it be space as it is now, or expansion?
No, we could work with what there is right now.
Okay, so with space as it is now, right? Which could be, which that would actually stay with 1A, right? So
Yeah.
so it's really a 1A. So then your C would be with the expansion, rental hall with the expansion. So you have 1A, B, C. As it is now, bringing in food. As it is now with the kitchen, with the expansion, and then you'd have then 2 and 3, which is what the public had stated, SAU, and available for rental for commercial space. And again, the town can limit that.
Can you draft that up?
I can
Yeah, so
put that together.
So Derek, that's an interesting point, because what you're saying is 1A, B, and C are all function spaces regardless, right?
Exactly.
And so it's just different versions of a function space.
Exactly.
And then 2 and 3 are like completely different uses. Right?
Completely
Okay.
different uses.
And there's a bigger gap between 1B and 1C.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Yeah, so if you're willing to put that together in a document,
I'll
bring
put that
it, and
together.
bring it to the meeting next
Definitely.
week, that would be great.
Definitely.
So, getting back to the agenda, the one item that I think is still remaining open is approval of the minutes from last week. I haven't seen the minutes.
They are online.
Yeah, I went online and downloaded, and what it looked like, it was just the agenda for the meeting had been put up as minutes.
Yeah, it's very thin.
Well, John, did,
Thin.
The minutes from the
29th of August, I think.
29th? Is that what we're
That's
talking about?
correct.
Yeah.
Larry, if people haven't seen it, may I suggest tabling it till the next
Okay.
meeting, and then you can.
Thank you.
Hi, John.
Because I came to take my wife out.
He's
She
not
can-
right.
she can leave
I
anytime
think he's
she
going
wants,
to
okay.
text you, because you were
can we do that? Let's table the minutes
There's a
until
lot
next.
more there.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
Yep.
sent this to
yeah.
him,
Same thought.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and he usually adds it to the,
yeah, I
And
want
you-
to read them and digest them before I approve them.
excuse me.
And this was, I think, to be added into the minutes, right? Or
Yeah.
would that be this
Yeah.
meeting?
Yeah,
Kirsten, what is it, what do we have, 48 hours to get a draft of the minutes in?
5
5
days.
business days.
Oh, 5 business days, okay.
5 business days. to get
John,
minutes in.
can I suggest that in addition to sending it to Cameron, you copy Kirsten on it? Just as a backstop, when you
Okay.
send those in.
Because we're right there.
And then we'll table the minutes,
Or my face,
until,
it's fine.
till next week.
If you
And
look at
all
that.
we need is a motion to adjourn.
This was the original.
Oh, you
Oh, I
can't.
can, that's
So-
right.
I will make a motion
This piece was
to
actually
adjourn.
Second, Frank.
1878.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So
Oh, I
this is
take it
historic
out.
and could be preserved.
Yes.
Yes.
All in favor of adjourning the meeting?
Which is
Hey guys, real
I can't vote.
critically
You
preserved.
can't either.
Oh, maybe I
Yeah,
can.
Yeah.
it's already been knocked out.
You guys,
Back into the
before we adjourn the
time.
meeting.
We're voting to adjourn.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, everyone.